Hello there, Jorbs coming at you with another Spire chat. Today I want to talk about Consecrate. 0 energy, common for Watcher. This deals 5 damage to all enemies. Incredible. It's an attack. Seems at first glance like this is a pretty straightforward card probably, but I think there are quite a few interesting things to talk about when evaluating this card, and I want to make sure that people who are watching these chats know what my thoughts are when I see a card like Consecrate. I'm actually going to step away from the game window here and let's do a little PowerPoint presentation. Does your deck need AoE? This is not going to take too long, but AoE means area of effect. So generally, here I'm talking about damage, area of effect damage, which is what Consecrate does. It deals damage to all of the enemies in the fight. The answer to whether your deck needs AoE or not is probably. So there are enough fights in the game which have multiple enemies that you generally want some component of your deck to revolve around efficiently dealing with those fights. A lot of fights in Act 2 in particular require some good AoE solutions, and Reptimancer in Act 3 can be one of the toughest fights in the game. Very unforgiving. Even strong decks can potentially die to it because you can take like 100 damage on turn 2 from this fight if you don't have good front-loaded damage to deal with the daggers. Yeah, you generally want a little bit of AoE to get through that stage of the game, and actually once you're done with Reptimancer, you can often get away with not caring about AoE anymore. But there are some exceptions. If your deck is very, very good at dealing single target damage, it may not need any area of effect damage anymore. So Reptimancer shows up, has 200 HP, say. If you can just deal 200 damage to Reptimancer by turn 2, you don't need area of effect damage. And that might sound ludicrous, but it's actually not impossible to have a deck that's that good at dealing single target damage. And if you have that level of single target damage, adding area of effect cards just doesn't really matter anymore, and all it's going to do is like make you weaker in the heart fight or something like that, where in the heart there is only one target, and so your area of effect cards aren't going to be very good. And exception 2 is sometimes your deck sort of doesn't have room for any area of effect cards. Your deck may not have any relics that draw cards. It may not have particularly great block cards or scaling cards. Like maybe you just have one good scaling card and like 1 or 2 good block cards, and it's like, if I add more damage cards to my deck, I just won't be able to find the other parts of the equation. And so in some situations you have to, you don't have to, but in some situations it is favorable for you to gamble a little bit on like getting lucky and dodging the difficult AoE fights. Or if you do end up in those difficult AoE fights, maybe have potions available to deal with them, like a bomb or explode potion is the sort of go-to area of effect potion. Okay, but probably you do want to have some area of effect in your deck, and if you want some sort of area of effect, it obeys all of the normal rules about putting together a deck. So if you have lots of card draw and little energy, the 2 major resources in Slay the Spire are how many cards you draw and how much energy you have to spend on them. And a goal for building your deck is to make it so that you can spend however much energy you have and however much card draw you have each turn effectively to create output from your deck. Now, if you have lots of card draw, if you draw like 8 cards per turn, but you only have 3 energy, say, then a 0-cost card becomes a lot better. So in that sort of situation, our AoE card Consecrate would be more appealing. If you don't have very much card draw at all, but you have lots of energy, if you say normally only draw your standard 5 cards per turn, but you have 4 energy, then cards that cost 2 or more become a lot more appealing. Especially since if you like draw 4 different cards that cost 2 or more in your 5-card hand with 4 energy, you can pick the 2 that do the things that you want to do that turn. So if you have, say, an Immolate, you've got a great option for dealing a lot of area of effect damage. If you have a Shockwave, you've got a great option for some temporary scaling. If If you've got a flame barrier, you've got a great option for block, and you can look at that hand and you can decide which output you need this turn and play the appropriate cards. So, Consecrate is the sort of AoE card which would fit well into a deck with lots of card draw but not very much energy, is something that we can observe about Consecrate. Area of Effect tends to want to be front-loaded largely because of the Reptimancer fight. The Reptimancer fight is so dangerous that it almost single-handedly requires decks to have Area of Effect cards sometimes. And in the Reptimancer fight specifically, your Area of Effect cards really have to do something by turn 2 or 3. And so a card like Noxious Fumes, while it is still an excellent card in general, and there are lots of situations where it's great, it's not a card that's enough to survive Reptimancer. Noxious Fumes doesn't like check off the box where you put a Noxious Fumes in your deck and you're like, okay, I'm safe against the AoE requirements of the run now. A card like Immolate, on the other hand, the second that you draw that, it deals a bunch of damage. Consecrate does deal damage the second that we draw it. It is front-loaded, but it doesn't necessarily deal enough damage to actually get us through the Reptimancer fight, so that's a thing to keep in mind. We might not be able to get by with just the one Consecrate. Sort of like in a defect run, you could have one Electrodynamics, and that would be enough to get through AoE stuff, like basically on its own. But if you don't have the one Electrodynamics, maybe you need to like get a Doom and Gloom plus and 2 Sweeping Beam pluses. But you just need enough of that AoE damage. And then a third point I wanted to make is that there are some very good Area of Effect relics, which make it less important to get Area of Effect damage from other sources. Mercury Hourglass is very, very good. Twisted Funnel is a silent-only relic, which is very good at applying AoE damage early fights. Note that you're largely looking, again, for Area of Effect, which is front-loaded here. So like Stone Calendar isn't a bad relic. It can do some good things, but it's not going to help you in the Reptimancer fight particularly much. It's just it only goes off on turn 7. Stone Calendar is actually insane in the Slime boss fight. Boss is sort of a very unique fight, but does sometimes benefit from Area of Effect cards, and Stone Calendar in particular very well. So you pay the fight a little bit. Back to Consecrate though. So the weird thing about Consecrate for Watcher is you often sort of need to make this card good, because Watcher just doesn't have that many front-loaded AoE damage solutions. So Bowling Bash is a card that can definitely be okay in a fight like the Reptimancer fight or other AoE fights. Sometimes you can try to solve Reptimancer by killing Reptimancer outright very quickly with like a couple of Bowling Bashes, for example. I don't think it's the best solution. I've ended up needing to do it, but it's not like something that I am really excited to do generally, I would say. But that's like out there. That's a thing. There's Consecrate that we're talking about right now. And then there's Conclude, which this is excellent. If you can go into Wrath mode, Conclude, and clear out the Reptimancer daggers pretty reliably. So Conclude's here, and Conclude's good, but Conclude's an uncommon, so you may not see it. And then I'm going to like honorable mention Wave of the Hand. Doesn't deal damage, but it does apply weak in an AoE way, and I think you want one of these cards in every single Watcher run you ever do. I don't think there's a single Watcher run where you don't want one copy of Wave of the Hand. Other than that, though, if you're looking at Area of Effect damage from rare cards for Watcher, like Ragnarok, sort of, but not really. And then Alpha. Alpha is Watcher's one large AoE card. So like Defect has Electrodynamics, Silent has Crippling Cloud Plus, incredible card, very, very important upgrade. Ironclad has Immolate. But Watcher has a 0-cost common, a 1-cost uncommon, a 1-cost common which doesn't actually deal AoE damage, but deals more single target damage in fights. And then this is effectively a 6-cost AoE rare, which takes a very long time to play. So we want our AoE to be front-loaded, right? Our AoE rare is sometimes okay, but often not a solution that's good enough for our problems. And then the second weird thing is that Watcher does feel like she has to grab some of this AoE damage a lot of the time. But Watcher's card draw is often not particularly great. Often Watcher does end up in a situation where she tends to draw closer to 5 cards per turn than 8 cards per turn. And Watcher can get away with that because like a card like Protect is an incredibly valuable block card. You don't have to draw that many block cards when you draw commons like Protect. Watcher also has like cards like Carve Reality, where you get 2 energy worth of attacks, which you very flexibly out of just this one card drawn. So there are a lot of Watcher cards which are very valuable to draw. And that means that Watcher can function with less card draw, and Watcher's available card draw is okay. But I think that the level to which cards like Protect and Carve Reality are very good means that you end up prioritizing that card draw quite a lot less. It's just not that hard to find good ways to spend your energy without needing to add card draw. And card draw can be, it can be bad. Like in the Reptomancer fight, for example, if I'm spending energy playing Empty Mind, that's energy that I'm not getting to spend playing something that solves my problem with Reptomancer right now. I can draw towards something that can, but it is expensive to spend 1 energy on a turn to do this. And so Watcher's in this weird situation where she probably doesn't value card draw that incredibly highly, especially in the first half of a run. But she doesn't have that card like Immolate or Electrodynamics, where you can solve your area of effect problems very card efficiently. And so, like, picking up a Consecrate or a Conclude is often very important, but you have to be very wary of what's going on in your Watcher run when you're doing this. Because another thing that Watcher has is sometimes she does have tremendous single target damage with like Eruption, entering Wrath form, and dealing double attack damage to things. And so sometimes Watcher gets very close to that point where you look at a Consecrate and there are just a lot of things pulling you in different directions. Like almost every factor in whether you want that area effect card is in play. It doesn't quite match up with what your deck's doing. Your deck tends to draw a few cards and have 4 energy, for example, so Consecrate's a little difficult to take. Your deck does have very good single target damage. Like your single target damage is almost good enough that you can kill each of the enemies individually, or you can kill the Reptomancer so quickly that the daggers don't matter. Are those are those the major ones? Oh, the fact that there aren't other AoE solutions becomes a really big problem with Consecrate as well. And the fact that you don't have that much card draw means that you can draw some really bad hands once you start adding Consecrates. If you imagine adding Consecrates to your deck, if you had like 20 of them, like every hand's great against Reptomancer, cool. Unless Reptomancer attacks you. But every hand's terrible against the card. So it's a fine line with Consecrate. And I just wanted to talk about that for a bit and explain what the nuance is going on here. And I'll let you be the judge of whether your deck needs Consecrate when it's offered. But just keep in mind what the trade-off is, what you're giving up by putting this 0-cost card into your deck that isn't particularly good in single target fights. And keep in mind that Watcher in particular tends to be a class which doesn't value card draw incredibly highly because of how valuable her individual cards are, but who doesn't have a very sensible front-loaded AoE damage card that fits within that schema. So you have to solve that somehow. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about playing Watcher form, to just talk about it for a while. All right, hope you're having a great day. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.